Okay, here we are. We're filming, we're off, and I'm sure you can immediately see, well, this isn't a normal Noel Plum video. This is going to be a little bit of a radical departure from what I normally do. But a couple of people had asked me, what has happened to your arcade cabinet? And duly, here it is. I've moved it downstairs, and I wanted to talk about because there's been some pretty radical changes to this, even though it looks identical. It looks exactly the same, but inside so much has changed. So I wanted to indulge myself a little bit because I thought some of you might be interested and tell you what has changed with this cabinet. And it was a big operation. Just let me say before I start all of that, it was a pretty big operation just bringing it down the stairs. The control panel comes off, right? All this lot comes off, which makes it narrow enough then that you can fit the unit through a doorway, because it's a big unit. It's a 32-inch monitor. It's a big cabinet. It's over 100 kilos with a control panel attached. But that control panel comes off. But when I got this originally a few years ago and I took it upstairs into the study, I had a friend of mine who's a big burly chap, sort of 17 stone of him. He helped me shift it up the stairs. When I took it down the stairs to bring it here, it was my wife and I did it, and I was at the bottom of it, and we sort of shunted it down one stair at a time. And when we got to the staircase return halfway down the stairs, I was kind of wedged against the wall and wondering where we were going to go from there. I thought it was going to be a case of, call the rest of the fire service out to come and bail me out. But we managed to get it round the stairs and get it downstairs. So what I want to do in this video is just to talk you through some of the changes I've made, because I'm really kind of excited by it. It's been my little project the last few months. I originally had a little project. I was going to get back into homebrew, and I got all my old equipment out and started to do a little bit of an inventory on it and see what needed replacing and what didn't. And then I got invested in this and thought, you know what, let's really try and update this, because I was in a situation with it. Let me just explain this before I switch the machine on, where I bought it with it had a computer inside, but it wasn't really powerful enough, and it played the old arcade games, but I wanted more. Why have something like this and not be able to play some of the brand new fantastic fighting games and stuff like that make use of having a control panel and being able to play two-player at the same time? But to do that, you need more computing power. Unfortunately, the computer that was in it was so weedy. Actually, when I managed to get it out, and it took some getting out because it was like glued to the back of the cabinet. It was the kind of thing that Hewlett-Packard, it was a Hewlett-Packard machine, would supply, they'd have a contract to supply 1,000 of them to some business. And it's really not even made for you to take the bits out. I wanted to take the hard drive out as it goes, and I'm still not sure how you get the hard drive out. It looks like it's in a caddy that's hidden behind the power supply, and the caddy, it's screwed into the caddy, but then it looks like the caddy is riveted into the case, and you'd effectively have to smash through the rivets to get the caddy out the case to get the hard drive out. As it goes, I just dragged the whole thing upstairs and took the information off it by using a cable there and leaving it in the case and just connecting it to my PC. But really, not really what I wanted. And the power supply for the old unit was about a 240 watt power supply, it turned out, once I got it out and had a look at it. So there was no wonder I was always having trouble. I tried to connect an extra hard drive to it to send something across from one hard drive to another. And when I connected the other hard drive, I couldn't have the control panel with the illuminated buttons operating at the same time as the other hard drive, because it didn't have enough power to do both. So that's what I mean. Technically, what the guy had included was good enough for what it had to do, but it was so close to not being sufficient, really. It seems to be something, if you look online at arcade cabinets, if you're thinking of buying one and you look online and you look at the specs, what you will see is that given that it's a product where you're paying a lot for the cabinet and for all that lot and for wiring it all up, it's a bit poor, the innards that you get with it, the PC innards that they come with. And one of the sites I was looking for that it was selling these cabinets, and you could get like the basic model or you could get the elite model, and the elite model was like £2,000 more, and the elite model gave you better PC innards effectively, but the better PC innards didn't come to that much more, right? I mean, you were like paying massively over the odds, and the spec for the PC innards was things like video card, NVIDIA GTX series card. So they're not even telling you, it could be like a 950 or something like that. It could be quite a few years out of date. The card you're getting for effectively a £2,000 upgrade. Never mind just the whole cost of the innards. So it seems to be something that's kind of industry wide with it. Anyway, let me switch this on. I'll show you the changes that I made. In fact, the first change involves switching it on, because previously, to switch the cabinet on, there's a little button up here, an on-off switch. That's not even wired in now. I didn't see the point of that switch. When I switch the cabinet off, I switch everything off, effectively. So it really didn't serve any sense. I just went into the BIOS of the PC, and I told it, you can set a setting sort of reboot following power failure. And all that means is then as soon as you switch the power on, everything boots up, which is what you see here. And it boots straight into this. Some people with these cabinets, what they do is they boot straight into a front end. So you can see on here I've got HyperSpin. You can set up HyperSpin to have a PC wheel, and you could have all these games on that wheel. But to be quite honest, I'd rather go into Windows and do it that way. Because there's things you want to configure, there's things you want to do, and I think this looks absolutely fine for my needs. What I did try and do is to select the games. Of course, you need a mouse. If you're in Windows, to get anything going, you need a mouse, and that's a bit of a problem, of course. There is on this machine, I always set up a keyboard there and a mouse. I'd set that up before on that little ledge, but you don't really want to be opening the front of your cabinet up every time. So I tried this thing. This was my first solution, which was to get one of these things, which has a little ball on it. So it's like a little handheld mouse with a little couple of click buttons for left and right click. And it worked really, really well. The only problem with it was that the little dongle that goes in the USB, the little sort of wireless dongle, would not always register the device. And I'd have to then open the cabinet up, take it out the USB, stick it back in again, which kind of evaded the purpose of it all in the first place. So what I ended up doing is this. Installing a couple of mouse buttons. Look, so there are my mouse buttons, and the trackball is my mousy pointer. So I just go around. If I wanted to right click on that, look, just to show you it works, there you go, that's how it works. So that's how I got around that. So some of the other upgrades that I've done with this, there was a bit of plexiglass, acrylic sheet, perspex, whatever you want to call it. I've upgraded it for a piece of low lead glass, so it doesn't have that slight greeny tint that leaded glass has. I think that looks a lot better. It probably the difference won't show in this, but it does look better. We've upgraded the PC. I gave up with what I was trying to do with the old one, and I thought, let's just buy a new PC. What I've got in there is effectively a sort of, I suppose, a lower mid-range gaming PC, really. It's an Intel i3 8100 processor with 8 gigs of DDR4 RAM. It's a GTX 1060 graphics card there, 6 gigs of graphics RAM. And then the hard drive, the interesting thing is that the big difference to the other specs that you would get just buying sort of gaming PC like that is that I went for a 1 terabyte solid state drive, because what I find with some of these games, these fighting games, is that they load in each stage. You pick your fighters, you pick your stage, and then it loads all the crap in. It loads all that in and loads the costume, whatever they're wearing, blah blah blah. And cutting that delay down, we had this running over Boxing Day, and all the family was over. There's 10 of us here, and we had a little tournament here. It was like Street Fighter, but just one round, and it was like a couple of round robin tournaments of 5 2 pulls of 5, and so really, really quick fire. But what you don't want is to be waiting 30 seconds for it to load each time. So I went for a 1 terabyte solid state drive for that, and that has all those games on. All the arcade games that run through HyperSpin run on a normal hard drive there. So that is how that was set up, and it seems to work really, really well. The other problem with a lot of these new games that I wanted to run, as I found, was that they don't like keyboard encoders. Now, if you don't know how this works, this is a little bit of a learning experience for you, depending on how you've stumbled across this video. If you've come from a sort of looking for arcade cabinet videos, you'll probably know about all of this, but if you're just one of my subs, you won't. This is a mini iPac. It's got a USB output, and you have like a wiring loom there with a load of wires off, and you rig the wires up to the 4 contacts, the 4 micro switches that make up a joystick, and all the buttons, blah blah blah. So every button is connected to a pin on one of these, and these are keyboard encoders, right? So what they do is you assign the input of each pin a key on a keyboard. It could be a V key or a shift key or a W key or a number key or a function key or whatever, or the question mark or whatever you like. You assign it one, then you go into your particular piece of software, it could be your emulator software, and you say, let's say you've assigned the upstroke on that, it's gone into this particular pin here, and you assign that pin a V key. What you then do is you then go into the software and you say, joystick 1 up, look for the V key, look for an input of a V key. So effectively this is simulating a keyboard, okay, other than the trackball, which isn't. But a lot of games don't like that, and they don't like that in somewhat face-palming ways. Street Fighter V, which we have on here, had the record for me for really bad programming in this regard, in that it allows you to set keyboard inputs for player 1, but not for player 2. So I could only play single player on here because it wouldn't recognize the player 2 controls. It would need to be a gamepad. It would need to be some kind of gamepad input, controller input, for it to recognize it. But even more face-palmingly than that, if you had your friend round and you wanted to play Street Fighter V, and you said, bring your gamepad round, I'll use the keypad, I'll use the keyboard, and you can use the game controller I've got. You still couldn't do that, because if you stick one game controller in, it assigns it to player 1. So you end up with player 1 being able to use the keyboard and the game controller, and player 2 not having anything, which is really, really badly programmed, I think that. But Soul Calibur 6 manages to outdo it. It manages to outdo it for not thinking these things through, because dually, on the face of it, really, really well thought out. It allows you, Soul Calibur 6 on the PC allows you to assign keys for players 1 and 2. Happy days, you would think. You can use your keyboard encoders on an arcade panel. No, you can't, because for some reason it doesn't allow you to assign a key for this player 2 select button, which is on an Xbox pad. It's that key there, okay? But you need that key in the character select menu, because in the character select menu it says player 1. Click the start button or the select button on your gamepad. Player 2, and that is how it knows which player's which. But as it hasn't allowed you to assign that frigging key, you can't get into the game to be able to use all the other keys. So that is like a major oversight there. The end result of that then is that everything needed to be rewired in here. Let me show you what happened in here. So this has been a pretty major project on my part over the course of the winter and the Christmas period, is that all this has been rewired, totally and utterly rewired. We had these before, and now instead we've got these things, which are iPac 2s. And how we have it wired is this. This iPac 2 here is wired into players 3 and players 4. And it acts like a normal keyboard encoder. And so it's coming out through that USB there. This one here, this is another iPac 2. This has players 1 and 2 wired into it, but you can see that rather than coming out the USB, it comes out of this expansion interface, which comes through to these, made by the same company, Ultimarc, and these simulate Xbox controllers. So as far as the computer is concerned now, that's running all of this, it thinks that I've got 2 Xbox controllers assigned there. So that's really kind of cool there. And it works really, really well. So I can play these games now and they work really, really well. I'll show you. So if I put Soul Calibur on, we'll start that booting up. Something else that I've done, you're going to love this. This is really cool. In arcade games, these are 8-way joysticks. You can move them 8-way. You can hit the diagonals, up and left, up and right. Older games like PacMan, Donkey Kong, they don't like that kind of input. If you're going up a ladder in Donkey Kong and instead of pushing up, you just catch the right, it will stop. Okay, Mario will stop on that ladder and you will die. Okay, it needs a 4-way joystick because that's what they had. They had like a diamond shape board behind them, like a gate. And just let me out, the sound's coming on this. I've set a little keyboard shortcut up. If I hold that down there, I can turn the sound right down on that, so that won't get in the way. So I have a little gate, and I can show you one of these gates here. If I come around here, you'll see the gate. So this is a gate here. If I show you this one, if I can get it in there, can I? Let's have a little look. Pull those wires out the way. You can see the gate on there is set in the usual fashion, so you can hit the diagonals. Those are the diagonals. You can see how we have got these screws on here, so you can spin these round. And if you spin that round 45 degrees, it turns that plate round. So you could turn one of these Sanwa JLW joysticks from an 8-way into a 4-way to play Donkey Kong, to play PacMan or something like that. But you need to lift the panel up, undo those screws, turn the plate round, do the screws up again. What a pain in the arse, ladies and gentlemen. Well, have a look at this. Have a look at this. Ultimarc, the company who've made a lot of these other bits, I bought this off them. Look at this. This is I've got some shift keys set up. This will shift player 1 because these games, the 4-way games, are nearly always 1 player. At the moment, this is in 8-way mode, which you would have for most games. But if I hold down that and that, bang, it shifts it across into 4-way mode. If I press it the other way, it shifts it across back to 8-way mode. And that is simply by pressing these buttons here, look. Is that the right button? There you go. There you go. Shifts it to 4-way and 8-way. And what is even cooler is that the arcade emulator HyperSpin is set up. You can set up Rocket Launcher, which is the back end of that front end, which launches main the arcade emulator such that it will automatically shift as you go into a 4-way game. I'll show you that, but just let me show you the controls working here to show you how it all works. Look, if I set up a battle there, I don't know, player versus player, just to show you it all works. Yeah, that'll do. Start battle. And this is the screen where you would have got stuck on. I apologise for the reflection having to look at me there. But look, player 1, press on your controller. That is where you press that button. Bang. And then you can select whoever you want there. Same thing here then on player 2. This is where you would come unstuck. You wouldn't have that button to press under normal circumstances. And again, that's where you can select whoever you want to play. From that point, you can then go into the game. And you'll see that the game runs really, really well. If I start that going there, you'll see that it runs really, really well. Put a bit of sound on. Choose a stage, random stage. And it looks really, really good running on here. If I draw let a bit of light out the room.
Warriors cross swords beneath the gaze of the ancient
Yes, it's always fun when a woman makes me grovel. So yeah, runs really, really well on here, as you can see. The only thing that I'm going to upgrade with regard to how it looks here, just let me get out of this now, back to main menu, is that what I've got here is a television that is running, that's it, let's exit that, exit, yes, is that I've got a television here which is running at 1080p, and actually it looks okay, looks pretty good, but there's enough power in here to sort of have WQHD 2460 by 1440 or something like that. Right, I've got enough power to have a bit more definition, but also this just doesn't look as good as a monitor running at 1080p, especially when it's showing things like text. It just doesn't look as good. There's a little bit of a sort of shadowing to things, so that is the only thing that I'm still going to improve on this, and that's going to be with my birthday money next month. I'll be taking this television out and putting in a monitor. But I was just going to show you then, let me show you the arcade games, and let me say, some people will say with regard to front ends like HyperSpin, you can get them for free, you shouldn't ever pay for them, but you can spend like a large portion of your life trying to set all this up, because this is something that looks really, really good, and looks really, really good. This, you know, HyperSpin makes all your old arcade games, sets them up really, really good. But you could spend a large portion of your life downloading a HyperSpin rocket launcher, setting it all up, configuring it, downloading all the games, downloading all these graphics for each individual, for the thousands and thousands of arcade games that you can get, downloading all these video snaps, right, downloading all this lot. This cost me $20 to have access to an FTP server, and it got me the lot. Now, all I was interested in was the arcade stuff, but there was about 20 different emulators. There was about 3 terabytes on there. I actually downloaded the lot, and it took about 5 days to download everything. My wife kept saying, can you get this? Can you get this online? I'm like, I can't. I've got this thing downloading. I can't do anything else for like 5 days. But it did get me all of this. And let me just show you what I wanted to do is to view favorite games here. Let me go to a 4-player game and you'll hear it shift. So if I went to PacMan, because we know PacMan's a 4-player game, of course. So if we go to PacMan, start a bit of PacMan. Start in a second. You heard it shift there, didn't you? You heard it shift, and you will find duly we're in 4-player mode, so we can play PacMan. So it does that automatically. And if I now exit PacMan, okay, so let's exit PacMan, you'll hear it shift back. All important, because otherwise you end up playing a different game and thinking, oh shit, the joystick is still in 4-player mode. Don't know if you heard it there, it shifted back automatically into 4-player mode. So now I have everything set up on here, and having a great deal of fun with this with my lad. My lad's just turned 4, but he loves playing with his dad. He puts up his little stool there so he can reach the control panel. We're having fun when people are coming around. That's why it shifted from here, because I wanted to bring it downstairs and do all these different things to it, you know, to get it all running up to speed so it can run all these new games as well as running those old games. It has taken some doing, as I say, because a lot of the new games in Steam do not like keyboard input, but actually the HyperSpin doesn't like joystick input or gamepad input. It kind of freaks with that, and you can use a program called Xpad or Joy to Key that converts the gamepad inputs back into keys again. But what you end up doing then is you'll find that I found that then you'd be playing an arcade game, and then when you press joystick up, it's registering two different things. It's registering joystick up and the keyboard input as well. And I thought, yeah, that's going to conflict with some games. That's going to end up giving me like double presses somewhere down the line. So what I ended up doing is scrapping that extra layer of software off there, the Xpadder software, and I just control HyperSpin with this, because this is still working through a standard keyboard encoder. Okay, well, do you know, I just wanted to do this video because I'd spent a lot of time doing this the last couple of months and getting this all up to scratch, and it's been a little bit of a project for me and a real learning curve actually, because prior to this, I knew there was all these wires and bits of electronics in there, and I had a sort of vague idea of how it all went together and what had to be connected to what, but I really didn't understand everything that was behind it. And I've gone through a kind of process now of adding all these bits on, and I feel like I've grown a little bit by learning all of that. So hopefully you found this a little bit interesting. If you've watched my videos over the years and seen this in the background, you will now know why it's disappeared. But it's not because I've sold it or because I don't want it anymore. It's because I actually want to get more use out of it, and it's really fun. People come around having a bit of gaming on it. That's what it's all about. And you know, if you're interested in one of these kind of things, this was built in the UK by Craig Turner at Turn Arcades in, I think, Wolverhampton. And you can contact him on Facebook, and this was the Street Fighter Cross Tekken was the design that I wanted, and all the graphics, that was actually off DeviantArt, but everything else he designed for me. I told him what game theme I wanted and who I wanted on the sides and all that lot, and he did the design and the construction. But there's loads and loads of companies creating these things now, and they are a real feature, I think. You know, there's loads of different ways that you can have them configured, and they are a real feature. But what I would say is, if you look at them, you will find that a lot of them, the PC innards are underpowered. And if you try and get PC innards so they're powered so that you can play the newer games, you will pay more than you need to pay, really. In some ways, what you could do with is buying the shell, buying the keyboard already wired up with the USB output, so you've just got to plug them in, but then buying your own gaming PC and doing that final stage yourself. You can do what I did, you know, get a full HyperSpin setup. $20 that cost me. That's all that cost me to get all that. And it was really easy to set that up from that position onwards. And then you can connect to Steam, download the kind of games that you'd want to play on one of these cabinets, and you can have a lot of fun. Okay, hope this has been a bit of interest to a few people. Thanks for watching, and bye.